Hello, superstar. If you want to write a speech and deliver a speech that actually moves people, changes people, wakes people up, well, then I'm going to share with you a framework, a model, a structure that I've developed that works every time. Let's do it. We're going to dive into what a lot of speakers get wrong when they're structuring, designing, preparing to speak. I'll share my 7-step formula that works every single time, whether it's a short speech or a long speech. And I'll talk about something that most speakers spend zero time on, but that actually matters almost even more than what you say or your actual content. Let's dive into it. What makes a speech inspirational in the first place? I mean, this is my opinion, but I would say that inspiration is about getting people to make a change, to take action. Like, the idea of inspiration is so that it is in service of some sort of shift, some sort of awakening, or a change in a way of being, or a new promise, a new possibility. Like, inspiration is about change. And in order to make change, you really have to lead people on a journey. You can't just be like, hey, everybody, if you want to have better health, you got to eat better. Okay, see ya. Right? There's a process that we want to bring people on to get them on board with the kind of change that they're going to have to do so that they have the energy and the motivation to actually do the thing. The good news is that we know a lot about how people make change and how we can change the way people are thinking. And so we can structure something very strategically in order to make that journey happen. And here's the most important thing to remember. Information is not inspiration. And a lot of speakers get bogged down with their content and with the information that they're sharing that they forget that that's not enough. And so that's what we're going to dive into in a moment. But first, please like and subscribe to this channel. Throw me down a comment below. I'd love to hear from you. First, I just want to share a little bit about who I am so you understand where this is coming from and why I might be a trustable source to listen to. So I've been in the speaking space for 18 years. I started this business back in 2007, and the first 7-8 years were pretty much just speaking and consulting. I was leading workshops, seminars, trainings, etc. And here's the secret. And I'm a little embarrassed, but I'm going to share it with you anyway because I'm here to serve. I used to pack my presentations in with so much information. And the reason I did that was because I felt like I had to prove myself. I had to prove something, that I had to show that I was smart and that I had good information. I thought if I just put more and more and more in, then I'll be worth it, right? I can ask for money. I can, sell myself as a speaker. I didn't realize that there's a big difference between information and inspiration. And it's been 18 years of learning and growing and studying and coaching with some of the best in the speaking industry and in the world. So fast forward, without getting through the entire journey, I am now, in this day, I am a 14-year member of the National Speakers Association. I currently serve on the board of directors for that organization. I've been the chair of the $1 Million Speakers Group. I mean, I've learned a thing or two about how to build a successful speaking business, and part of that is really changing the way that I approach my actual content and my speeches. So this framework that I'm going to share with you, it's really important that you understand that it's not the only framework that works. I'm not claiming that this is the end-all, be-all, only way to do it. What I am claiming, which is still a pretty big claim, is that if you follow this structure, you can't go wrong. It won't ever steer you away from inspiration. It will never give you a bad result if you follow this structure. There are plenty of other ways you could do it and still get the same or even a better result, but this will never steer you wrong. This always works, and it's a great place to start if you're staring at a blank piece of paper and you don't know where to start. So let's start with step 1, the opening of your speech. The first few seconds when you walk out onto that stage and you speak to your audience are some of the most powerful moments in your entire speech. And if you blow that saying, "Thanks for having me. oh, I got delayed at the airport, or hey, wherever I am, how are you? That is a lost opportunity. That first moment when you start speaking is powerful, and you can really harness that power. Everybody's waiting, everybody's expecting, so you want to open with what I call a hook. A hook is a way to grab people from the moment you begin. Here are some great ways to do a hook. This is a pretty common one. You've probably heard it before. Quoting a really powerful, startling, surprising statistic, or opening with a cold open with a story. I'm actually going to be delivering a keynote on Saturday, and my opening line is, picture this. It's the first 2 words out of my mouth. So you can open with a story. A joke is always great, as long as it's, going to appeal to, the entire audience. Some sort of way to connect with the audience, right? Like in the beginning, they don't know who you are. You're probably a little bit nervous. So, it's a good idea to do something that allows you to kind of loosen things up and connect with the audience very quickly. The next part of your speech is the why. You'll notice this is why, what, who, how, now. It's really powerful stuff here. Very complicated. The why, I've talked about this before if you've seen any of my videos. There's the big why and the little why. You might want to trust both. You might want to choose one, but the why creates context. What context does is it puts your speech in some sort of larger perspective. Like, why does this matter right now? So, for example, if you're doing a speech about women's empowerment, you might open with a startling statistic about women CEOs, women only being 3% of the CEOs in Fortune 100 companies. And then you can establish the why, the context, like, hey, women are rising into leadership more than ever before, right? So you can set up the context with the why this conversation matters. This is why we're talking about this today. That's the big why. Now you could also do the little why. You can do both or just one. The little why is, why does this matter to you in this room today? Why does this matter to me? The little why is, why does this matter to you and me and to this container, to this group of people that have gathered? And the big why is why this matters in the larger scheme of things. And it's also where you can lay out the problem. Like the big problem. Whatever you're focused on, like in women's empowerment, the problem is women have all these opportunities, but we hold ourselves back. That could be a problem, right? I'm just making stuff up right now, but you get the idea. The why sets up, hey, this is the problem to be solved, and then the what, it sets up the solution. So really what the what does is, once you've established the problem, what I've found, and what you might have found in your work, is that there's a problem and then there's a real problem. The problem underneath the problem. I often call this the blind spot. And this is where you want to bring in the problem and the real problem. So example is, I had a client who was putting together her talk for our Performance Academy last year. And she works with people on their gut health. But so she's talking about, hey, here's the problem. We live in this, we're stressed out. We're stuffing food in our faces too fast. We're eating bad food. We're toxic, right? These are the problems. People are having trouble sleeping. They're having trouble concentrating. Like, these are all the problems. The real problem is gut health. So now you've distilled it down to something we can dive into and address. So that's what the what does. It tells the real problem. It shares the truth of it is that our gut is responsible for 90% of our emotional state, or something like that, right? That's the truth. And then you provide the solution. The solution is to support our microbiome. That gets us into, now this who can kind of move. You can put the who here. You can put the who here. I like it here, but you can move that around. But the who is, why are you a credible source on this topic? And do you have a story to tell, like an origin story about how you became that credible expert? So this is where you can connect more deeply with your audience, share a bit of your personal story. That's when we dive into the how, which are the steps. Here are the steps to restoring your microbiome. 1, choose only organic foods. 2, whatever those steps are, or any framework that you have. This is my framework in this video. This is the how section of the video. We're in it right now. By the way, I use this structure for every video on my YouTube channel. So the how is your content, your deeper, richer, wide, and deep content. And then the now is, all right, here's a call to action. Now that call to action can be like the next time that you're in a drive-through, here's what you do. Or the call to action could be, hey, if you want to learn about fixing your microbiome, download this free toolkit that I put together for you, right? So the call to action, it gives them something to do so that they can take step one right there and then, ideally, or very soon. And then finally is your close. And you want to do the close after your CTA because you don't want to end with the CTA. You always want to end with some sort of grand finale, like a story, I do a poem, or something else that's special. I do a poem into an interactive exercise. Speaking of interactive exercises, there are stars next to places where an interactive exercise could really go well and help you connect more deeply with the audience. The thing about inspirational speeches is that more and more people that are hiring speakers are asking for engagement and interaction. They no longer want just the expert on the stage telling stories and talking like I'm doing right now. They want people interacting with the audience. So if you can put exercises, lived experiences, partner, shares, or do something with your audience, where I put the blue stars are really good places to do that. But you can figure out what works for you. And remember how I said that there's this one part that's more important than anything else and most people spend zero time on it? Yeah, it's your energy. I've worked with a lot of speakers. I'm friends with a lot of speakers, and there are few. In fact, I can count them on one hand, people who actually have a practice to make sure that they're energy rich and that their energy is coherent and grounded and present and elevated before they get out on that stage. So make sure, don't just focus on your information, on your content, focus on your energy so that you can be a more powerful presence in the room. And just your presence, even if you flub the words, which I do all the time, people will be connecting with your energy. So don't forget that part. I hope this was helpful for you. And if you want to connect with me about how to build and grow your business, how to write an inspirational speech, let's connect. You can find me at superstaractivator.com/go.